panel session. Thank you so much, Reja, and we thank Mass, of course. And before you leave, in memory of Dr. Samir, I would like to add to everything that Reja said. He's one of the founding members of Mass, and may his soul rest in peace. The problem is with the next day plans. In my opinion, this has become more of a business-like setting in most cases, and therefore it's as if there's an international workshop and they're giving uh, tens of international organizations and income and many research and international organizations and civil society organizations. It's become an income for them considering what's going on the grounds. Me personally, I'm the only person responsible for what I'm saying now. And considering all the plans, the mainly absent, what's absent is the overall vision, Palestinian vision, to the next day of ending the genocide. And this is something that we're going to pay the hefty expense soon, sooner, not later. And not to mention that all these plans included the financial aspect. However, they totally lacked the psychosocial aspect and reconstructing the Palestinian Gazans after 2 years of the genocide, ongoing genocide that they have lived through. Whereas the Gazan citizens do not care if they die as much as they care of delaying this death up until they can provide for their family through their path of death or their journey to death. Before Dr. Jara leaves, I would like to extend my gratitude to Mass. You can leave. I just wanted to give you a positive note before you do. I salute Mass because it's almost the only organization since the war started. They have been looking for the futuristic vision after war, and they have presented so many seminars or studies and interventions to work on this topic. This first panel, in my opinion, is exceptional because it includes three major players in the Palestinian efforts to have Palestinian preparedness for the next day, specifically in spatial planning, whereas each of them have had extensive experience in this, and they have conducted so much starting in the 90s when Mr. Samih Al Abed, my dear friend, has efforts of crystallizing the very first plan in this in the 90s of the last century. And moving to Ali Shaath, and he's like the Joker on lots of things. However, he specialized, and then ending with Samir Abu Eisheh, our dear friend who has produced the latest in terms of the national spatial planning that we have, which I believe is going to be an asset in the Palestinian efforts to create preparedness for the next day. Before I give the floor to my colleagues, and in contradiction to what my dear friend Raja said, I would request that you keep your time limited to 15 minutes maximum. And on the 13th minute, I'll remind you, and I won't give you an extension because we only have 45 minutes. The first Raja taken 15 minutes, and we won't have enough time for others to participate. We have 50 participants in Zoom that we would like to give them the floor also. So please be cautious and be mindful of your time. Mr. Muhammad saying if someone would like to add notes or questions in writing, so you can please do so via Zoom on the Q&A or the chat. Ali Shaath, I've known him since January 1st in 1994. He's an expert and has a background in economy, reconstruction, and industrial policies. So he's an international body that's mobilized in Palestine that we can benefit from. He's worked with the Palestinian government. He's a consultant and for industrial zoning and was a project manager on in various organizations. And for the newcomers, he has been the head of the ports. Do you think RIN 25 is going to be able to overcome the elite planning towards? And the second question is, what are the tools that you suggest in order to avoid the exclusion that we see or over centralization for the day after war? The floor is yours. You have maximum 15 minutes. Good morning, everyone. I'm very pleased to give you a comprehensive spatial plan for Palestine with focusing on reconstruction in Gaza and the northern of West Bank. This plan is based, or this vision is based on punctual planning and has lessons learned and several specialized organizations which has been produced by RAND. It has an ambitious urban planning, spatial planning for the infrastructure of modern infrastructure. And we will discuss this together considering the political restrictions that we have imposed, especially in the West Bank and Jerusalem and Gaza. And this could have us have the two plans that I wanted to discuss today are the vision, the spatial vision for Palestine, issued by RAND in 2025, in March of 2025. And the second plan is called the transition from displacement camps to urban societies, and they discuss shelter and how to gradually. And I was forced by my friend to stick to the 15 minutes to discuss the first part and not the second, but I'll try to at least take 2 slides to discuss Gaza because of the important slide. The sources of financing this plan is important. Maybe my colleague Abdul Wahab did not mention this in his report. I just wanted to list it for you because it's important. Endorsing RAND's endorsement is based on the American government, such as the defense and the army, because the very first project that RAND presented was for the American army, which is for the Air Force. And this moves towards the national security, and it does not discuss our profound local national plans. And what RAND has produced, or the main reports that they have issued, one was 2005. Everyone knows about the ARC. Everyone who works in this, everyone knows the ARC plan. It was conducted by donors, American donors from the private sector. They're liberals, they support peace based on the market, and you can see the influence of the Western policies. Those two plans were conducted in 2005 and 2007. As for the other plans which have recently been proposed, they're called the shelter after war. It was from camps to communities and pathways to eternal peace. And these were issued by RAND, just like the ones in 2005. And this brings us to how to adapt to the ownership or the Palestinian aspect of it. And the last initiative, which is the topic of our speech today, is the spatial vision for Palestine, which was funded by the private sector, led by the CCC, and it's a generous amount given to RAND to produce it, and this shapes this from a Palestinian vision for Palestinian people locally and nationally and in diaspora. And this was a private Palestinian sector initiative led by the private sector, which is very important. The main objective of this plan or this vision is strategic development strategies which are implementable to improve the life of Palestinian people in the short and long term, with setting the plans for a future state. And this is how the plan works. And with that, I still believe that sustainable development is still not achievable without addressing polis- politics and justice in the Palestinian and imposing our sovereignty on our land, such as occupation, refugees' rights, Jerusalem, land, water, all these issues that we have given up to negotiations to come up with a final solution since 2000. I believe these issues are what would decide how we can hold these plans sustainable. The next slide, sorry, is the spatial vision that has four main dimensions. It First, the spatial focus. They have taken a sample of six geographical areas, and these six geographical areas, each area was assessed what capacities it has, what resource it has, what could we do there in terms of development. And the second dimension is the interventions based on phases. So they have a cumulative aspects. And the third is empowerment, institutional empowerment. There should be institutions that would lead development, and then they would prepare for the Palestinian state. The fourth is this is probably a new term, such as resilience. Sometimes this new term is diplomatic development. How can we use development, small development, accumulative points to pursue political solutions? And this is where we can have a question mark. These four main dimensions would set the plan for projects of priority. So we're going to discuss about 200 priority projects, spatial projects, such as a project in six areas in Palestine. We're going to discuss this later. And it overcame all the political, such as control over land, water, and like sea. Everyone talks about the land and sea, and they forgot the airspace. We forget the airs. It's not just an area C. I believe it's an X area because we have no control over at all. So as we've mentioned, there are six main sectors. Uh, as you can see over the slide in front of you, it includes governance, cities, that includes cities and housing, environment, transportation, water, and energy. They've taken these six sectors. As you can see, we have discussed access, and now we're talking about sectors. So it's developing these sectors. These six sectors are not all inclusive. There are others, such as health and education, that are not included. And therefore, we're not saying that this is a shortfall. This is just a sample of the sectors, and they have shown what's the status quo for these sectors and what could be envisioned to be implemented, and what would be set for strategical planning that would require, let's say, diplomatic pursuit to be pursued diplomatically later on. They're mainly focused on how to solve current situations in order to improve the life of Palestinian citizens without facing or without having any confrontation towards sovereignty or Area C and its control, or the expansion of settlements, and without discussion the resource looting the resources, mainly the water and land. I have to finish in 5 minutes, which would be very hard. The next slide, please. Methodology, as I've said, it's based on intertwined small projects which would have an accumulative impact, and then it would move towards strategic planning. So there won't be a gap. However, it's very important to tell you that it has the Palestinian and Israeli joint plans and interests, and it includes options, technical options, and tries to guide the future diplomatic economic development discussions towards the benefit of both sides. In addition, it suggests an overall inclusive plan. As for the areas of implementation, includes the West Bank. They suggested 4 areas: Nablus, Jericho, Hebron, and the Jordan Valley. And they've taken Gaza, the city of Gaza Gaza and Jerusalem. All these projects are quick wins, which could start immediately, including water topics, transportation, and so on, and they're short-term plans. And overall, it's been proven with experience, any development under occupation, and we can see this after 3 decades of experience doing so, would not have tangible wins. So therefore, we need to have the political framework first before we discuss the criteria of a plan. The plan does not include the time frame. It's 200 projects, and if you can please list the map so we can see it on the slide. That includes West Bank and Gaza on the plan, on the map, sorry. There's a technical issue. If, as you can see, look at the projects, they keep passing me notes. Look at the projects, they're all over these beautiful projects which are great for our people, but they don't have a time frame, and that's important to note. You have 200 projects and 4 main sectors, and you do not have a time frame for any of the plans. When do you want me to implement that? Where is the priority? We need to have priority lists. And this slide before last for this inclusive plan. Who are the beneficiaries? This is a gradual plan to make an impact, and and there we cannot wait until the political conflict is over and to find a solution. We should start this immediately. And the main three parties are Palestinian, Israeli, and international community. Each has an impact. The Palestinian, the impact would improve the livelihood of Palestinians and improve work opportunities. For the Israelis, it's a more stable environment and a less violence and having more economic partnership opportunities. And for the international community, they'd be able to implement their plans better. And on Gaza, there's something to live for, definitely. The urban center in Gaza for reconstruction. On the left side of the screen, we can see the current war. And in the middle, you can see the relief phase. And the next would be the long term, so they have divided it into wartime, immediate, and long term. And they said that this would be an urban center. For me, as a Gazan, Mughraqa is not an urban center, and it definitely not is not an urban. And they've taken the olive area as, and Dr. Salim with me in the next map. On the next slide, you can see this. That the next slide is a map by Dr. Hassan has shut my time down. This shows the destruction and how heavily the destruction is and where the housing could be. And if you can just see this, they've created four options. Rand created four options. Well, the first is to deport all the Palestinian Gazans out of Gaza, as a friend has mentioned, because this does not work. So we need to take it out it's not an option. Second option is to redevelop urban planning, and the third is to have the camps, and the fourth. And the two questions that Dr. Hassan has asked me, I can answer them now. I need to answer your questions. The first question that Dr. Hassan proposed was how implementable or how effective they are. I reiterate that the plan includes reestablishing trust through small projects, which would be accumulative, and it won't be as imposing plans top down. I call upon having this from a technocratic plan to a political participatory approach, including the private sector, the local councils, the refugee camps, to ensure that this is part of justice plan. The second question that Dr. Hassan proposed is that we propose several tools for planning, including the polycentric planning and participatory planning and GIS. Thank you, Dr. Ali, and hopefully next time you would stick to the time limit. The second speaker we have is Mr. Samih Abu Eisheh. Samih Abu Eisheh is the former minister. He used to be the Minister of Planning in the past in one of the previous Palestinian governments, and he's well known as an instructor in civil engineering in An-Najah University or at the Najah University. He has several backgrounds academically and in spatial planning, transportation, infrastructure, and national development. He used to be the former Minister of Planning and was a dean of engineering at Najah University. And you have two questions. How do you read the gap between the Palestinian capacities that we have available and what the reconstruction plan requires on the intermediate level, and the 2050 Gaza plan, how implementable it is from all the from the current aspects, from the current capabilities that we have. Best of health to everyone, and if you allow me, we can show the presentation. Today, we will speak briefly on the national plan, development spatial plan, all-inclusive plan. This is something that we have started in 2020, and we're almost concluding it nowadays. One way or another, Ali has presented it, and we can discuss this. If you allow me, we can speak briefly where we have arrived. This is in line with the government's vision to create the dismantling, the economic, geographical, and political dismantling from the occupation. And we've signed a memorandum of understanding in July 1st of 2020 first to cover all the sectors.
Water, of course, but the area and space was something very important. The consultation team and the Palestinian team consisted of 25 experts from the West Bank, inside the occupied territories, from Jerusalem and from Gaza. And we worked for the past 4 to 5 years to come up with the strategic plan by the end of 2024, beginning of 2025. And we started with the approval after consultation, and now we're in the final phase. Of course, there's a very important, an urgency and importance to deliver this plan, because it gives us an overview of Palestinian state that could be implemented realistically. And we around a year ago, in April 2024, we submitted it to the Council of Ministers, and we urged everyone to submit their recommendations and to come up with the institutional and societal community from Jerusalem, West Bank, and the occupied territories. Uh, and it was held in the 8th of August 2024, and we took all of the recommendations from the civil society institutions, the unions, and all of those who received the paper to give their opinion. And on the 29th of January this year, we reviewed it again and we submitted it to the legislation committee to come up with the final views. And now we submitted the final draft through the minister of the Council of Ministers for hopefully approval, and to reach to a point where it's approved by the Palestinian community before implementation. And we face lots of challenges and difficulties, especially throughout the past year and a year and a half, especially in Gaza, and what we need in terms of the planning under the current circumstances of genocide, war, and we will speak about this at the end of the debate, and the geo social and political challenges, all the settlements in Gaza, the borders, and the population issues, the economy, environment that we cannot shed a blind eye to. And we need sort of a balanced strategic planning also that includes the infrastructure and has a strategic plan for the implementation of a realistic Palestinian state. There's a wholesome of plans, points that we need to delve into that incorporate the whole national overview of the urban and rural areas, and also the sectoral governance, governmental and private sectors, and also the resources and how we can utilize them. and mitigate their exploitation, and to reach to a regional and then to a local state, and to delve into the best developmental initiatives and activities in 2025, and to sort out legislations and rules by which we can follow and uh, adhere to. And I was a consultant at the ministry, and I was a regional strategic planner for 2025. It was supposed to be approved by the ministry and was supposed to have a draft as a national plan for Palestine, but it wasn't approved, unfortunately. And uh, in 2005 it was there was something that was approved, and in 2009 we have now a draft by which or from which we did a couple of studies to protect the resources and the national and heritage um, aspects and assets of Palestine, and we shifted from a spatial planning into the local governance committee. And now after we have been appointed to finalize this, we started from tackling the overview of the government to the realization of the implementation of the state of Palestine. That we have an overview. We have a Palestinian state that has full jurisdiction over its territories. It's free. The economic aspect, the political aspect, and also with regards to the future of the state. And from the things that we did consult with the government is that we have a political and strategic plan for the whole Palestine on the borders of 1967, and to have an aerial and also a land route between Gaza and the West Bank uh, under the plan of Gaza 2050. But we did it on two phases: one prior to the implementation of the state, and another one after the implementation of the state and the ending of the occupation. And in the upcoming years, hopefully, yes, we will be starting to implement this until we reach to the implementation realization of the state, and to end the occupation and to have full jurisdiction over our aerial space, land, and also sea from 2024 until 2050. And to take into consideration all of the sectors. And also with regards to the population, it's very important that we took into consideration the number of the population in West Bank, Gaza, and the occupied territories, while taking into consideration those in the diaspora. And we agreed that we have 1.5 in Palestinian would start to return back after the establishment of the state from 2040 until 2050, and then they will be integrated into the Palestinian villages and cities, and we will create 10 communal or communities. In 2023, we said we have 2.5 million, and we reach 44 million by 2050. And we did this concept to analyze strategically in collaboration with the ministries and the governmental bodies, and to do the governmental sectors, and to forecast the future needs and the alternatives, the economy, agriculture, roads, infrastructure, and to all of these standards and special standards, and to do this in a digitized system. And after we did this, we delved or moved again into the national overview or prospect that was summarized in a plan that we will tackle in a moment. And the steering committee from the Council of Ministers and a team from all of the ministers and governmental bodies related to this. And we have a team of experts by 20 experts and a technical support team of 10 also experts from international and local communities that would have their own overviews from the community, from the local community. And we utilize the GIS as a tool to appropriate spatial, where we can have industrial cities, for instance, where we can have communal villages, cities, where we can have service centers and providers, uh, residential areas. Also, with regards to the telecommunication and movement and transportation and traffic, and to choose those areas based on certain standards that were identified through the analytical progressive uh, analytical hierarchy report. And then we had a conflict with regards to the needs and spaces, and we tried to digitize this to give us some sort of balance to see where we can implement all of these facilities sectors, and the outcomes were urban outcomes, movement, transportation, water, sanitation, energy, electricity, communication, agriculture, and then we have uh, a national plan, 3 points, and commenting on my colleague Ali, and he said maybe we turned the blind eye to the reality. We understand that even if we implement the or realize the state, we understand that there will still be an occupation for many years to come, but that doesn't prohibit us or prevent us from actually trying to realize this idea or this concept and thinking of the future. And then here we also use drafted how we can utilize the lands in terms of agriculture, residential, industrial, etc. And maybe because I'm running out of time to give you all of the details of these expansion of the urbanized societies and areas, Jerusalem, the Jordan Valley, and in the north, in the south, all of the economic and social and political aspects, and maybe there will be some sort of or maybe we'll have some time to tackle or to delve into those in details in the future. But at least we need mechanisms of implementation after approval, um, and also with regards to the funding, and to reflect those reality on the ground, to make it some sort of governmental. So to have some sort of initiatives distributed in time and space on 3 different phases, and to see what can be achieved in each of the phases, and how we can have a developmental or quarterly developmental plans, and of course to utilize all of the resources. But of course, we need some sort of monitoring and evaluation methods by the Ministry of Planning, Strategic Planning, that was suggested and awaiting approval. And now, especially that there's a general uh, genuine coalition until 18th of September 20, since the 18th of September 2024, where this order sort of rule was approved. For instance, the Knesset said that they will not allow a Palestinian state to be established because they think that this is a threat to their national security. And we expect the Council of Ministers to attend to this as fast as possible, because it would hinder any plan that we would try to formulate, and we understand that they had a former plan for Gaza, former plan for the West Bank, and for Jerusalem. So this all was taken into consideration, and I will speak a little bit about Gaza and our members from the UNDP. There's a spatial plan, such as stated earlier in MAS, that we need to implement for this, when we can start, when we can implement, when we can start to think. Of course, we were assigned to this task on March this year, and we did the first draft, and we're waiting for its approval. And the plan has three phases until 2030. The first one is the emergency response phase, and then reconstruction, and then at least simple reconstruction based on our standards and foundations until 2030. So let's say that we have multiple inquiries for the developmental plan of reconstruction, taking into consideration the systematic destruction in Gaza and how we can rehabilitate them and how to build it back better and to enhance the livelihood, economic and political livelihood in certain areas, and maybe in some certain areas we need some sort of other mitigations, and how we can recycle all of this cement and destructed infrastructure, and to have an idea or an overview of the best developmental plans that we need to implement throughout the first phase. And we did this in a plan, in an operational plan that we can reflect it on this national spatial plan, so that we can identify it based on our observations throughout the past period. But this will also reflect on 2040, and also in the third phase of the implementation until 2050. So we hope that this genocide, first of all, ends as soon as possible, and then we will start to take into consideration our duty as Palestinians to reach to the implementation of this plan in order to reach the realization of the state of Palestine. So just for the reference, uh, just if you have a PPT, even if you do not see all of those PPTs, we will share them on the website of MAS, so you wouldn't miss a thing. And now we reach to the third panel, third session of today. Our third speaker, Mr. Samih Al Abed. He's known since 60, probably 70 years. Is head of the Residential Council, Palestinian Council. Is a planner for the spatial spaces and residential areas, regional governance, and he was the Minister of Residency, and he was member of the National Committee that was actually abolished or dismantled 3 months after its foundation. In 2007, he was still a minister. He was a coordinator of Gaza 2050, and he's active in many local institutions. The questions for you, in addition to other questions, that what are the comments and overviews on the risk assessment plan, and does it reflect the reality in details, and how do you assess the damages with regards to the plan of reconstruction? And we give you a bonus. You can answer the 4 questions previously stated for the 2 panelists earlier, 2 speakers. And after the discussion, we will take a lunch break for half an hour, and probably we probably won't be able to manage at quarter to 12, maybe 5 to 12, or because we are running out of time. So first of all, I thank Mas for this session, and I thank all of my all of the speakers, former speakers, because they covered all of the things that I wanted to speak about. But I was one of the participants with them with regards to this plan, and I thank the first speaker because he criticized all of those studies done in this regard. And we are sorry, of course, that Gaza wasn't taking the amount of priority it deserves. Uh, the reason why we gather here today. But of course, with regards to planning, all of the developmental countries, the top-down plans that were submitted by the governments for the 5 years to come, they failed completely because they tried to take plans from developed countries to give them to underdeveloped countries. And this is why it failed, or those plans failed, because they come from the top down. The UNDP have their own uh, perspective. Randy have their own perspective. We have our own perspective, but we need to start from the bottom up, the actual needs of the people, because the actual needs of the people differ from one country to another. The needs differ from one state to another. So any plan that that is done without taking into consideration the up-down, bottom-up approach would be a failure. Second of all, any planning, if we don't take into consideration the sectoral policies, spatial policies, developmental policies, if they do not intersect, the planning would be a failure, because the sectoral planning should be understood on where it will be implemented, because it serves the people, and how we can connect it with the overall uh, spatial plan, and take everything into consideration, not only the political, the economy, or the infrastructure. We need to bring everything together: the social, economy, infrastructure, environment, and also the institutions, the local institutions that would be implementing, or first to implement this overall plan. And those are the 3 points that we need to take into consideration. I don't want to criticize the papers and researches done, but those are the things that weren't taken into consideration in any of those uh, plans. And also, this overall plan is that we call the vertical planning, or the from the top down, should take the horizontal space into consideration, to mix between the vertical and the horizontal, because it's necessary for any developmental work in this regard. And this is something that I could see that we lacked in the current planning phase. And we thank them because they identified the needs, how we can implement projects, etc. But all of this is theoretical. The only thing that I could see from the top down, bottom up, as a practical thing, was the spatial developmental plan that was done recently. And do not forget that I participated in this. So we participated in this because we took into consideration all of these aspects. And when we started with this, the 7th of October didn't take place yet. And we are now in a different phase. Of course, we have this. We have it on the shelf as a background. But now we have a new emergency. We have a new thing that affected the whole developmental plan in Gaza and in the West Bank as well. We do not exclude the West Bank. When it comes to Gaza, everybody speaks about reconstruction, and reconstruction is an easy word. But if you think about it, we have the social reconstruction. It's not about only education, health. We have people who don't have any relatives left, any homes left. We have lots of things that should be solved and take into consideration the economic reconstruction. We need lots of researches with regards to the economy in Gaza, the infrastructure, the environment. We have people under the ground. We have people above the ground, and we have people in. We have waves of people moving from the north to the south and from the south to the north, being exiled and relocated every now and then. So we need to understand that there's a prerequisite for the construction. Before we start with the construction or reconstruction, we need to know what we or how we can handle the people there, how we can tackle their main needs, the shelter, the piles of destruction, and the accessibility to the main services that should be one of the main pillars. And if we don't think about these 3 points in a good manner, and I reassert again, it's a prerequisite of reconstruction. If we don't think of this, maybe we will not be able to move on. And you have to understand that winter is coming in a bit, and 2030 is around the corner. It's only 5 years from now. So we need to understand that the spatial and we need to understand that when will the war end? When can I gather the people? Where can I understand how I need to get rid of the destruction and the piles of rubble? First of all, there's a possibility, and we worked with the Ministry of Labor and at the Council of Presidential Council in Gaza, that's in constant contact with you. You identified places of shelter, temporary, of course, not permanent shelters, until we start with the reconstruction phase. And again, this is why I call it a prerequisite, because I think of temporal things that I need to apply in a certain time and a certain space before I start with the reconstruction. And of course, we we charted the developmental areas in Jerusalem, West Bank, and Gaza. There's no country in the world that can do a reconstruction in every village, city, and governorate. We need to take the donor or the fund into consideration. And if we exploit or if we over exaggerate this reconstruction phase, nobody, if we assess it at billions, nobody or no funder would be able to allocate this amount of money. So we need to prioritize the needs of the people in despair. What are the standards that I need, uh, or I need to identify the standards of these needs, of these temporal needs for these people that I need to implement on the ground before I start with the reconstruction. This is the correct planning. I need to understand the situation in which those people are now. The research should be more in depth, more in detail. I do not want to speak about the macro level. I need to understand the micro level, the temporal needs of the people now. We have a population or generation that hasn't been in school for 2 years. We need health facilities. We have health facilities and hospitals that are in dire need of equipment, of supplies. Those people need energy, need electricity, need water, need infrastructure of routes to move, freedom of movement. So I request that we start with the bids to to implement those projects, because accessibility is the first thing. Is we need to understand that people can reach their workplaces, reach their places where they can collect water, electricity, etc., and shelter. And of course, I what where our role lies, Mr. Shaddad, is that Palestinians need to do something, but also the Israelis will want to do something different. They will come into institutions and say, okay, you need to do one, two, three. You cannot do two, three, four, for instance. So you need to understand also this. We have other challenges to take into consideration. So this is why we need to think of the institutionalization of this process. How can I be related to this? If the Egyptians come into this plan, where would they stand? How can I maintain the relationship with my neighboring countries, with the international community? Because if we ask for a state, I need to tell the world that I am able to do things for Gaza. I'm able to reassess the situation of Gaza and reconstruct Gaza before I ask the international community for a state. And how or what's the extent of us entering this phase of actually meeting the needs or the temporal needs of the people? If we speak about the political negotiations, probably sometimes we turn a blind eye to those small details. We need to delve into the temporal needs of the people again. We need to understand how we can bring the ministries into this level and to be a part of the prerequisite of reconstruction before delving into construction or reconstruction. And we are trying to be progressively part of this. And this is how I am orienting my speech. And those are the challenges that I'm trying to draw before you or to draw on the table. In all of the plans, the Israelis are requesting that the Palestinian Authority be out of this picture. So I need to think of how I can delve in. And I understand that the NGOs, they work with the government and they have a role in Gaza and they can play this role. There are multiple NGOs that are still active in with regards to education, health, and residency. And and now under the current war, we rehabilitated 450 buildings through the Ministry of Residency. And through those NGOs, through the ministries, we need to understand how they can be effective, how they can have their own role to be part of this overall plan. Uh, they want to recognize the state, so we need to understand how they want to recognize the state. Um, but for us, we need to delve into the actual phase of reconstruction. And we ask you, Mr. Rajai, to do more sessions like this one because we haven't even started. This is the surface overview. So my colleagues, you understand that we have lots of plans, lots of things to think about, but the reality forces us into a certain route and into a certain approach that we need to tackle the needs of the people. People need to come from under the rubble. This is a whole different perspective, a whole different planning. Of course, everything he said is respected, and I, I take this as being thoroughly reviewed. But we need to understand that there are other needs for those people in Gaza. And we're not speaking only about the Gazans here. We need to understand that the local participation from the West Bank as well as from Gaza for this reconstruction phase is very important. And I would like to thank you because this is what I wanted to comment on. And thank you, my colleague Samih. And I nominate you for the best or time respecting speaker. So again, thank you everyone through the whole and through the Zoom session. We have almost 80 80 members joining through Zoom, and now we open the space for discussion. And we give you only now probably 15 minutes. So maybe 1 minute per participant, and at the end we'll give you 5 minutes for each of the speaker to answer. And we hope that we can manage to take 15 times, or yesterday 15 times for the lunch, so we can have at least 30 minutes for the lunch. If anyone wants to join through the Zoom, you can raise your hand and we'll start with the people in the hall. Uh, Dr. Mohammed Samhouri, good morning. Sure. We have then Nida Kamhawi. Anyone else from the Zoom meeting? If you want to join, please raise your hand. We have also a question through the chat. I will also tackle it at the end. Where do food systems fit in this vision? And how can Palestine become food sufficient while pursuing baladi agroecological farming? So we start with Mr. Shaddad. Please, 1 minute only. So I don't know if anyone from the Ministry of Agriculture and also the Egyptian side is here. So I think we spoke about dozens of plans. Also, a lot of them are outdated, and the conclusion is that we don't understand what plan should be prioritized first. But we need to understand that for instance, the Americans and the Egyptians have their own plans, and the Egyptians said that probably the plans that are on the ground are politically oriented, and we are speaking about the state of intervention, the recovery, health, and what's the component by which we can speak with the Egyptians to come out with the recommendation for the political level on the Palestinian Authority, to speak with the Egyptian government and to make them aware of these, or make them on the same page with us on the international, or let's say other political agenda. So a refugee camp, for instance, was destroyed. How we can rebuild a refugee in Jenin, in Tulkarem, and also in Khan Yunis in Gaza. So we're not speaking only about Gaza, we're speaking again from the West Bank. Will we build the refugee camp as a whole building, or have some sort of tents or Zinco shelters? Next participant, and please stick to 1 minute. There are certain criteria, and the Palestinian jurisdiction and the analytical, economic, and social analysis, the connection between the West Bank, Jerusalem, and Gaza, how we view Israel as an occupation state, as a neighboring state, or as a countering state, how we can tackle the issue of the rubble in Gaza and the infrastructure, and also the jurisdiction on the ground, because we do not want to the plans to overlap. And also, do we need plans, or do we need actual programs and projects that are continuously implemented? On the Zoom, Ms. Nida. Yes, good morning. In 1 minute, my question for Dr. Samir is that I was one of the members of the spatial uh, temporal plan, and in terms of its implementation, sustainability, rehabilitation of infrastructure, and to have all the role players into this plan. How can we tackle the issue of the allocation of funds, and whether we do not find any donor, etc.? What's the plan for this, and how? Also, Mr. Ashraf, that we have an issue that I'm not sure whether it was tackled or not. Do we want a state or not? How can we solve the problem of illegal armed groups? There are lots of political issues that we need to understand, and if we plan only on the on the social and economic level, we need also to tackle the political level. Are we decisive on terms of the political realization of the state? Rani, my question is about the relationship between the NGOs and the role of the institutionalizing of these plans in Gaza. I think based on experience, we have grassroots organizations, state initiatives that are empowering people in Gaza, and social economic support, and food sustainability, and agriculture on the rooftops, and there are pilot projects that are ongoing. So NGOs too, are they aware of those initiatives, and can they support this? And can we actually bring the populace to participate in these initiatives or not? Dr. Muhammad Samir, good morning, and please 1 minute. Dr. Muhammad Samhouri, you are muted, please. Yes. So in 1 minute, Doctor, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mas, for this workshop, this session. I thank all of the speakers, Dr. Ali, Dr. Samih, and I wanted to assert everything said by Dr. Samih with regards to the general developmental aspect of the plan and the temporal needs of the populace, of the residents, and the prerequisite that was implemented by him, and the focus on the main issues. But with regards to the macro planning, we need, I think, and this is directed to my colleague Raja, is that we have a research or a paper on rebuilding the economy of Gaza after the destruction of the economic infrastructure in Gaza. And this is something that should go hand in hand with this spatial and temporal planning. And this is also only a comment, not a question. Dr. Mahmoud Abu Rob, and you have 1 minute. And now I think we live under the economy of disasters, but I think we have also the economy of genocide, uh, and uh, and everything that this word has to mean. I think we need a plan for the economy that sets forth an implementational plan while preserving the achievements of the developmental operation and process, and how we can make the resident or the citizen an owner of these plans and not a participant of these plans. And this is at the core where we can have the citizens preserve those plans and participate in them rather than throwing them in a parachute, said as a slogan on top of them, or laying them on their shoulders. The Ministry of Labor. So thank you, everyone, and I thank all of your inquiries. We had at the Ministry of Labor a plan since the first day, and we started to implement it on the ground. And we started with our partners. We worked with the shelters during the ceasefire. We worked with removing rubble, setting priorities regards to the Ministry of Health and Education and municipalities. We worked with the UNDP on certain projects and the Arab Committee or Commission and the Palestinian Residential Council. And we worked today with Dr. Samih, and Dr. Ali on the spatial planning to project these plans on the temporal spatial plan in Gaza and to move them into uh, funding projects to be submitted to the donors. And I hope that I can listen to the doctors and also the owners here that these plans were worked on since 2020. So how did this destruction affect these spatial and temporal plans? And how can I work with the donors to bring all of the efforts together in into the realization of these plans in the reconstruction and development of the Gaza Strip? Mr. Khalid on the Zoom, you are also muted. Please remove your mute. Morning, everyone. Again, I thank Dr. Ali and Dr. Samih and Dr. Samir. First of all, I agree with all of the perspectives and standards, but if we speak about billions and institutionalization, we should actually think of having a certain body under the umbrella of the Palestinian Authority, some sort of a service that would help with this implementation of the reconstruction of, and should be some sort of an authority of reconstruction within the Palestinian services, the Palestinian Authority's security services reconstruction plan in the West Bank and in Gaza, to bring in all of the effort and to speed up and to boost the reconstruction. And I understood, because I was part of this once, it takes a lot of time to get this done and boosted with the ministries. And this is something that I direct to Dr. Ali and Dr. Samir to maybe comment on. Also, we have a question by Rima. Under which government political framework will these plans be implemented? Will there be re-election in Gaza? Thank you. for your question, and hopefully someone from our colleagues will answer. And now we move to George. Good day. My name is George Sidan from from, from Cartel. My name is George Sidan from Cartel in Palestine, and we did a small study, and we reviewed six studies of reconstruction on the next day of the war in Gaza. And there was something collective between all of them that is challenging, which is the exclusion of the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, from all of these plans. So we need to delve into the political aspect because this is something uh, uh, that is very dangerous when it comes to the exclusion of the PLO, especially within the Randi plan. And my question is that is there a connection or a communication between the centers in Palestine and planning institutions in Palestine and to challenge them in those areas, to pressure them, to communicate with them from centers, institutes in Palestine? And we are ready in the cartel center to also delve into this aspect.
The previous reconstruction. I have a recommendation. My comment is on the colleague who have reviewed the reconstruction plan. We worked with MIT in the States. The overall assessment is to assess something based on a scope of a study is not based on desire. For example, when they said that this is an interim plan, but here, if we cannot overstretch the studies. The other issue is my recommendation. We're all discussing critique and we're tired. The donors would always saying, give us an alternative. So what's required now is not go back to ARC, which was 100 years ago, like since 2005. We should think of the plan is good. We have the Palestinian National Plan has improved after the experts have worked on it. And we also the spatial plan. Right now we need to market. Thank you. Sorry for interrupting you, but I have to. Ala. Thank you so much, Doctor. I have three questions. Dr. Samih, I fully agree with you with everything that you have proposed, but honestly, who really cares about us now? You focus now on the people's needs, but the overall, like for 30 years, they have intentionally undermined people. What do you mean by 1.5 displaced persons? Who are these displaced persons? And this beautiful plan, how different it is from the last 30 years that you've presented. And Dr. Ali, what's the proposed? Why did the private sector go to RAND and fund them? Compare, why didn't they come to MAS or any other Palestinian entity to do so? And what's the next plan for the Phoenix plan? Thank you for sticking to the time. We have also questions from Zoom, one from Basma. Basma has two questions. Best of health to everyone. This is an important topic and it's good to plan. However, don't you see that the most important requirement or the prerequisite is to end the war and end the genocide, because development targets people, and genocide and displacement and deconstruction of the city would prevent you from implementing any of your plans. We need interventions that would help the resilience of people, whether in West Bank or Gaza. And follow up at the importance of including the civil society in, I don't know what this word means, that on all levels, to include women, youth in reconstruction and making decisions. He wasn't able to read what she typed. Ali Sha'ar. I'm honored to have been the expert who developed the health sector. in terms of the health sector, we took into consideration when we developed this system to review the demographic status and the pandemic reality in Palestine. And I request that we include this same context when we conduct the reconstruction, because if we look at the pandemic status and health status in the Gaza after the genocide, we would definitely realize that there are many more challenges, and the reconstruction should not just be building rooms and we should make sure that the system is ready for the new challenges that the Gazans live. And my other question is, what's the mechanism that you're going to undertake after today's discussion in order to follow up the implementation of the plans which have been proposed? Thank you. You had a question? Via Zoom, we have Marwan. Why hasn't all the plans include developing the Palestinian institutions, which includes reconstructing or reshaping these institutions, because we need to reduce the number of institutions or and arrive at the resilience that we are seeking and reduce the expenses, the expenditures in order to be ready for the day after. Considering the multilateral solutions, which have different mechanisms and different methodologies and different aspects of inclusion, Palestinian inclusion, how do you believe the tools such as the matrices and the spatial visions, how do you see they can create a new vision, Palestinian vision for reconstruction? And do you feel that these plans are able to work on a reconstruction towards to dismantling the occupation, or is it just going to reproduce the same? What your question requires a full seminar on its own. However, we presented your question and the last chance. Anyone who would like to pose a question, if there are no other questions, thank you so much for all your interventions. I'm so sorry for interrupting you and cutting off the time. Each of the speakers, you have only 5 minutes to address the questions. Please make sure that your interventions would include answering all the questions, whether the questions proposed via Zoom or in person. And thank you for adhering to the time limit. The questions that were addressed to me personally, I would like to start by answering them from Engineer Khaled Jabir, who discussed creating a new body, which is the Reconstruction Commission or the Reconstruction Authority. We have two decrees issued by the ministerial cabinet, and there are ongoing discussions between Fatah and Hamas on this regards, as you well know. However, in my perspective, I don't believe that anything was born, and therefore, I believe there's a need for decentralization of planning for Gaza, specifically for the reconstruction of Gaza, uh, for its importance. And it has to be a decentralized body under the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the Palestinian National Authority. However, they are decentralized and they are able to implement the plans. The second question, if there's any communication with these organizations that presented the 11 plans that have been proposed, and Raja has he's not here to address those questions. Mass, I believe, has communicated with these centers, and they were able to gather the information required. However, we assigned each of us a task to review a specific plan to give our perspective. But we don't have direct contact with these centers. Like me, personally, I was supposed to review RAND. I did not have any direct communication with RAND when I reviewed the plan. The next question from Ala. What's the private sector? Why did the private sector send the amount? One of my colleagues gave me the amount or the figure. Why was it a generous funding for that? There is some reputation for these good think tanks because they affect the internal decisions in great countries. For example, RAND is just one of them. Because if it's having a study funded by the private sector, I believe is a positive impact, because as if we are intervening in comparison with all the previous six reports that RAND has issued on our behalf, as if we are intervening as Palestinians, as a Palestinian private sector, to say that we have an impact, because what they have to say makes a difference. However, we should have had actual plans. The RAN 25 plan says they did not bring any information on Gaza, and that's what's written after the war has started. And this is not sufficient. And they were addressing, and they left the more important issues or more pressing issues to discuss the general ones. Because not only that Gaza has been deconstructed economically, but also the West Bank, especially the northern part of the West Bank, Jerusalem also has been targeted. So the study should be supported, and I recommend and call upon Mass and our colleagues here to try to look into the issue. First, in terms of people, for all these years, we have forgotten the people. We were looking for the leadership, and we were trying to take care of them. So they made us servants for them. On the other hand, those who are in leadership positions, they should take care of the people, not the other way around. They should be there to serve people, not people serve them. And that's the reason for our regress right now. We should have had people in a better position, because they are most important, because they are the ones who are going to carry the development further on in the future. We have several, as for example, the reconstruction of Aqaba. They've created a body that worked on it. They are relevant to the king and the ministerial cabinet. However, they were doing so locally. We have, for example, in Lebanon, uh, we're going back to the top-down approach, which is, so the reconstruction commission is not far from the authority, but it requires specific expertise to be able to work on this topic. And we have several lessons learned that we could have from worldwide experiences or case studies in the world. The refugees, We know the refugee camp locations, they are deconstructed. We know that they have been demolished. We need to reconstruct them. So, do I have to reconstruct it as it used to be? Not necessarily. I need to reconstruct it for those refugees to live a dignified life, but this does not deprive them from the right of return. The minister Ashraf Al Ashrami is living in a good house here. Does that mean that you don't have the right to return? No. I'm not trying to defame you. I'm just giving you examples. The very first um, example, I always say this about Dr. Ibrahim Abu Lebdeh, may his soul rest in peace. He was quite advanced and he was a professor known worldwide, and he was faculty in Birzeit. And then when he passed away, he was buried in Jaffa. So even after his death, he had his right to return. We want to rebuild the reconstruction of the refugee camps in a better conditions for the people, but this does not deprive them the right of return. The other topic we've talked about politics, but we do not decide what do we do in terms of politics. We have our vision, but we cannot really discuss it because we have a legitimate authority. Do they want to have one or two states? We want to have a Palestinian state where on the 1967 borders with Jerusalem as its capital. If the leadership decide to say we want to have our state on the cantons that Trump is going to give us the leftovers of Palestine and have Gaza a separate country, that would be a different country. But we have to abide by the strategic leadership that we have. And I'm actually against having to say, one would say Jerusalem, Gaza, and West Bank. And we have allowed them to divide us, allowed Israel to divide us. And this is not right. Either we start talking about our own state that we would like to establish, where we have our development strategy that includes all three components, or not. That's a different topic to discuss at a different occasion, but that's all I have to say. And there's one more question that I would like to address in terms of the financial support. The donor countries are not angels, just to let you know. The donor countries have their own agendas and they have their own connections, even with the Israelis. And none of them could do anything without getting back to the Israelis. We all know this, isn't that true? We have the experience since 1995 until today. They did not bring anything new to us, and we know this. Now you're discussing politics. No, I'm just stating facts. We just need to be very clear towards the plans that they set for us and the funds that they give us. Our role is to identify our priorities clearly and to say this is what we want, one, two, three, as the very first part of reconstructing Gaza. And Hassan did not answer my question, my very first question. You'll answer him in the break. The last speaker, Dr. Samih Abu Eisheh and Mr. Abdelhadi over Zoom, the question that was posed, what about the labor in terms of implementation, the Palestinian labor, and I hope Dr. Samih addresses that. And a kind of reminder, after we finish, we will conclude the session. It's a coffee break. I thought it was lunch, so I apologize for the miscommunication early on. Dr. Samir, the floor is yours. Best of health. I'd like to quickly address some of the issues that you have mentioned. First, the relationship between the plans and the programs. We should have a developmental vision that is based on strategic objectives. And then, if we have a plan that would address the needs or address the vision and reflects the objectives, these strategic objectives, then we would definitely need to have action plans. So we need to have strategic analysis that identifies the problems. It was in depth. We have a vision, a sectoral vision, and an overall vision up until 2025. And then afterwards, we should have programs and projects derived from it. And this is essential for any plan. The plan cannot just be a special plan and that's it. The plan, it should include the economic, social, and construction plans that include also infrastructure. This is very important. However, in terms of funding, it requires funding to be able to see the light. Some projects would not have sufficient funding, or big funding, especially in the very first phase, which we call the pre building the state, because we would not be able to have any development under occupation. But it's important for us to at least maintain the minimum standard for people to live in lively conditions. Like any other plan, it should be realistic and it should be derived from a developmental aspect and has a financial backing to it, because funding would have a political cost. Internally, our resources are quite restricted. The private sector wanted to participate in implementing various developmental projects in Palestine, and including infrastructure, and some of them are actually working on it or about to start working on it. However, the external funding, if and we cannot even say Arab countries, we could have also a political um, a expense to it, and international cost also might have an expense, and therefore we would start bargaining, or at least compensating, to say, are we willing to pay such a price or not, to be able to pay for our development, however, within our vision, within our standards and our criterion. That requires political decision, first of all. Any developmental plan, including plans, should include or should be based on Palestine and Palestinian hands, as we've said. This was done only by Palestinian capacities and Palestinian efforts. We all worked hand in hand in order to be able to implement this, and also implementation should be the same. Unfortunately, some of the plans do not believe that Palestinian labor could conduct what should be conducted, despite knowing that Palestinians have worked in all the Gulf region and other countries. They have been the basis, or that they created the foundation of rebuilding those states. And to say the refugee camps which have been destructed, there are some refugee camps where there are several. We've said that every 250 square meters where it was reviewed. We have Jabalia, Shaath, Rafah. These have been obliterated. They should be reconstructed to give people a better life. It should give them even some space, to have some green spaces, to have towers. But we also need to require the political, to make sure their right of return would be well known. We have to also include that in terms of the planning. Um, as for the displaced persons, we're talking about 1.5 Palestinians who now include everyone who has been forced to leave Palestine, specifically West Bank and Gaza, as a result of the 1967 war. These people are now in various Arab countries and worldwide. We should include them. We're not talking about uh, the refugees. The refugees, um, then that would include the right of return and would be quite problematic. But those who would like to return on their own, because they want to, or to create a project, or to live here, they have the full right. However, this is not the purpose of this. And the last thing I would like to address is, you have 10 seconds. The multilateral development, which includes governance, politics, economic, and social, and infrastructure. It all has to work in harmony, and it has to work in a way that would not, it would work. We cannot do it one at the expense of the other. It all has to work hand in hand. On behalf of all the speakers, I extend you our gratitude for being with us, and we hope that we were able to address your questions, whether those in person or those virtually. And we sincerely apologize if I was extremely strict in terms of time. To announcement, the next session would start in 15 minutes from now. We're gonna have coffee break outside, and lunch is at 1:30. Thanks again.